Welcome back to Conversations, where I'm continuing my discussion with retired Brigadier General Blaine Holt. Over the past few months, Russian President Vladimir Putin has met with leaders of China, Iran, and Turkey. Should we be concerned, or is this an act of desperation as Putin attempts to maintain his own leadership position?
Well, I think it's very interesting that when Putin went to the SCO meeting where all of these countries were, there was a couple of new players at that meeting as well that should alarm us all. One of them being NATO member Turkey
Hmm.
was at this meeting, and with Iran and India and Pakistan, this was something that gave us pause. What we found was Putin got an earful from India and China about how long this war has dragged on. Everybody thought it would be a very short affair, and they want him to wrap it up. And so I think you see a shift in his strategy as he comes back to Moscow, and he immediately ordered the call up of 300,000 additional forces and the
Hmm.
referendums that will be a complete sham. They'll probably have some sort of announcements on these things. The SCO countries are likely to recognize those referendums, and possibly Putin sees this as his off ramp. But with the internal instability from these actions, I think his problems are actually just getting started.
You make some really interesting points. What do you predict will happen to Putin as a result of all of this that's going on if he's removed from office? I mean, who will likely take his place?
Well, that's the dangerous question. We'd love to see Putin get off the stage. He's been threatening us with nuclear weapons in World War III, and honestly, that's just not good for diplomacy, as you well know. But what I would say is, in the offing or in the wings, you've got his mentor in Patrushev. You've got other members in his inner circle like Bortnikov. These are not gentlemen who will come and be anything other than strongmen. They might pause for a while and try to gather up the economy and gather up the people. But dissidents like Alexei Navalny and others, they still have a long way to
Hmm.
go to pierce into that. But the people might decide something different
Hmm.
because we're seeing some astonishing events with these protests.
Hmm. Well, yeah, and I mean, they have good memories. Years ago, they came from a great deal of poverty, and life seemed to be getting better, and now it's all sort of coming apart, it seems. As we just mentioned, Putin recently met with Chinese President Xi Jinping. But I understand President Xi may also be in political trouble. What's your take on this?
This is the greatest palace intrigue in foreign affairs in a very long time. What we know is that at the SCO he fled. He still had a dinner banquet to go to, and his delegation and him just packed up abruptly, unannounced, went to the airport, got in a private jet, and went back to Beijing. And then we had this silence and a lot of rumors all over the world, mostly from India, to say that a coup has been executed, and they even gave out a
Mhm.
general's name. And the thing that bothered me was there wasn't this massive denial. There was no, let's put President
Mhm.
Xi back out on stage immediately, because he's got his coronation coming up at the 20th People's Congress on 16 October. You would think he'd want that dispelled right away. When it turns out it took 5 days for someone to mention that, oh, it was a COVID thing. He's fine. Here's him with his mask. Everything is good. So I think there's more to come here,
Mhm.
a lot more to come. The one thing I can
Mhm.
tell you is, and it's speculation, it's not COVID. We just don't know what it is. And yes, if you look at China's domestic problem, he's in trouble. That economy is so
Mhm.
underreported as a disaster, and it's a huge one, and it also will touch us all.
So much of what happens in that economy is just not available for really understanding or interpreting. Would a change in leadership in China be beneficial to us here at home?
I think it would. There's two predominant factions in the Chinese Communist Party, as opaque as that seems. The other side of this is the Jiang Zemin faction, which hails from Shanghai, and their roots and their philosophies go back to Deng Xiaoping during the opening, where the central focus was on prosperity and
Mhm.
wealth and entry into the global system. On the other side, you've got princeling Xi Jinping and his faction, which believes in more of what Mao was trying to teach. And we really see it in some of his policies
Mhm.
with zero COVID and some of the things we see happening to the Uyghurs. It's much more got a feel to it like the second cultural revolution, I would say. But if the Shanghai faction took over in October, I don't think they'd love us, but I certainly think it'd be better for world security.
And from a geographic perspective, Turkey is a country that's strategically important to us. The nation's currently seeking membership to the China-led Shanghai Cooperation Organization. Can you help explain what the SCO does? And since Turkey's also a NATO member, is that a conflict of interest?
It's a super conflict of interest, and we should watch this. Turkey gets in trouble all the time with us at NATO because they're usually the other. They're just the fly in the ointment. They vote against everything. We saw that recently with the attempt to admit Sweden and Finland in the group. And and then if we look at how important their geography is, they are the cotter pin for East and West geographically, culturally. They're the great diplomat that you can extend a hand to and ask them for help in people or countries you can't touch, like Iran. And yet here they are with 80% inflation, a failing economy, nobody working on that with them, and their own problems. Erdogan moves over to the SCO, the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, which is much more of an Eastern organization that really views the petrodollar and Western leadership in this world as a problem. And then we see the pictures of Erdogan being very chummy with Xi Jinping and Putin, no matter what controversies are coming out of there. That's very dangerous for us.
Very. There's been some concern about American policy also as it relates to Taiwan. When we return, we'll discuss the mixed messages coming from the administration. That's next.